Chapter 25, Paul's trial before Festus. 3 days after arriving in the province, Festus went up from Caesarea to Jerusalem, where the chief priests and the Jewish leaders appeared before him and presented the charges against Paul. They requested Festus, as a favor to them, to have Paul transferred to Jerusalem, for they were preparing an ambush to kill him along the way. Festus answered, "Paul is being held at Caesarea, and I myself am going there soon. Let some of your leaders come with me, and if the man has done anything wrong, they can press charges against him there." After spending 8 or 10 days with them, Festus went down to Caesarea. The next day, he convened the court and ordered that Paul be brought before him. When Paul came in, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him. They brought many serious charges against him, but they could not prove them. Then Paul made his defense. "I have done nothing wrong against the Jewish law or against the temple or against Caesar." Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, "Are you willing to go up to Jerusalem and stand trial before me there on these charges?" Paul answered, "I am now standing before Caesar's court, where I ought to be tried. I have not done anything wrong to the Jews, as you yourself know very well. If, however, I am guilty of doing anything deserving death, I do not refuse to die. But if the charges brought against me by these Jews are not true, no one has the right to hand me over to them. I appeal to Caesar." After Festus had conferred with his council, he declared, "You have appealed to Caesar you will go." Festus consults King Agrippa. A few days later, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived at Caesarea to pay their respects to Festus. Since they were spending many days there, Festus discussed Paul's case with the king. He said, "There is a man here whom Felix left as a prisoner. When I went to Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews brought charges against him and asked that he be condemned. I told them that it is not the Roman custom to hand over anyone before they have faced their accusers and have had an opportunity to defend themselves against the charges. When they came here with me, I did not delay the case, but convened the court the next day and ordered the man to be brought in. When his accusers got up to speak, they did not charge him with any of the crimes I had expected. Instead, they had some points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a dead man named Jesus who Paul claimed was alive. I was at a loss how to investigate such matters, so I asked if he would be willing to go to Jerusalem and stand trial there on these charges. But when Paul made his appeal to be held over for the emperor's decision, I ordered him held until I could send him to Caesar." Then Agrippa said to Festus, "I would like to hear this man myself." He replied, "Tomorrow you will hear him." Paul before Agrippa. The next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp and entered the audience room with the high-ranking military officers and the prominent men of the city. At the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. Festus said, "King Agrippa and all who are present with us, you see this man. The whole Jewish community has petitioned me about him in Jerusalem and here in Caesarea, shouting that he ought not to live any longer. I found he had done nothing deserving of death, but because he made his appeal to the emperor, I decided to send him to Rome. But I have nothing definite to write to his majesty about him. Therefore, I have brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that as a result of this investigation, I may have something to write. For I think it is unreasonable to send a prisoner on to Rome without specifying the charges against him." To be continued. Chapter 25, verses 1 through 5. When the new governor arrived in Jerusalem, the Jewish religious leaders appealed to Festus to grant them a favor: transfer Paul to Jerusalem. Their secret plan was to ambush and kill Paul when he was moved, a plot they had devised 2 years ago that had resulted in Paul being transferred to Caesarea in the first place. See chapter 23, verses 12 through 30. The next morning, some Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. More than 40 men were involved in this plot. They went to the chief priests and the elders and said, "We have taken a solemn oath not to eat anything until we have killed Paul. Now then, you and the Sanhedrin petitioned the commander to bring him before you on the pretext of wanting more accurate information about his case. We are ready to kill him before he gets here." But when the son of Paul's sister heard of this plot, he went into the barracks and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the commander. He has something to tell him." So he took him to the commander. The centurion said, "Paul, the prisoner, sent for me and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you." The commander took the young man by the hand and drew him aside and asked, "What is it you want to tell me?" He said, "Some Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul before the Sanhedrin tomorrow on the pretext of wanting more accurate information about him. Don't give in to them, because more than 40 of them are waiting in ambush for him. They have taken an oath not to eat or drink until they have killed him. They are ready now, waiting for your consent to their request." The commander dismissed the young man with this warning: "Don't tell anyone that you have reported this to me." Then he called 2 of his centurions and ordered them get ready a detachment of 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen to go to Caesarea at 9 tonight. Provide horses for Paul so that he may be taken safely to Governor Felix. He wrote a letter as follows: Claudius Lysias, to His Excellency Governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews, and they were about to kill him, but I came with my troops and rescued him, for I had learned that he is a Roman citizen. I wanted to know why they were accusing him, so I brought him to their Sanhedrin. I found that the accusation had to do with questions about their law, but there was no charge against him that deserved death or imprisonment. When I was informed of a plot to be carried out against the man, I sent him to you at once. I also ordered his accusers to present to you their cases against him. But Festus denied their request and told them to send representatives to accompany him to Caesarea to accuse Paul of any wrongdoing. Once again, then, God was working behind the scenes to protect Paul from the murderous plans of the Jewish leaders. They were scheming to have Paul return to Jerusalem, but God was working to take Paul far from their grasp, to stand before Caesar. No matter how grim your circumstances appear, do not forget the glorious truth that God is in control. Whether directly or indirectly, submit to his kingdom agenda in Scripture and trust him to accomplish his will for your life as he sovereignly directs your path. Verse 6 through 9. In Caesarea, Festus had Paul brought before him. The Jews also came forward and accused Paul of serious charges that they were not able to prove. As he had been in the habit of doing, Paul denied the unsubstantiated charges. He was not guilty of anything against the Jewish law, the Jewish temple, or Caesar. Like his predecessor, Festus could find no reason to condemn Paul. Nevertheless, he had a province to run, and he wanted his constituents to be peaceable citizens. So as a favor to the Jews, he asked Paul if he'd be willing to stand trial in Jerusalem. Verse 10 through 12. But Paul had had enough. He had not wronged the Jews, so he argued that he shouldn't be given over to them. The question before Festus was, is Paul guilty of wrongdoing against Rome? Although Paul was standing at Caesar's tribunal, being tried before Caesar's representative, Felix was unwilling to render a verdict. As a Roman citizen, Paul had the full right of appeal, so he declared, I appeal to Caesar, and Festus consented. Paul had been exercising every legal right available to him. He wanted to make it clear to all that neither he nor Christianity was guilty of subverting the empire. Moreover, he wanted to go to Rome, the highest level of earthly authority, with a message from the supreme authority. Believe in the Lord Jesus and submit to his kingdom agenda. Verse 13 through 14. King Agrippa, Herod Agrippa II, was the son of Herod Agrippa I. See chapter 12, 1 through 5. It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. When he saw that this met with approval among the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the festival of unleavened bread. After arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. And 20 through 23. He had been quarreling with the people of Tyre and Sidon. They now joined together and sought an audience with him. After securing the support of Blastus, a trusted personal servant of the king, they asked for peace because they depended on the king's country for their food supply. On the appointed day, Herod, wearing his royal robe, sat on his throne and delivered a public address to the people. They shouted, "This is the voice of a god, not of a man." Immediately, because Herod did not give praise to God, an angel of the Lord struck him down, and he was eaten by worms and died. And the last member of the Herodian dynasty to rule. The Romans had put him in charge of a few territories that did not include Judea. When he paid a visit to Festus, the Roman governor presented Paul's case to the king. Since Agrippa was Jewish, Festus hoped he could help him make sense of Paul's case so that he would know what to communicate to Caesar when he sent him. Verse 15 through 22. Festus laid out the sequence of events for Agrippa. The governor had expected accusations of horrific evils against Paul, but instead the case against him turned out to be one of religious disagreement about a certain Jesus, a dead man Paul claimed to be alive. Not being familiar with Jewish religious teachings, Festus confessed, "I was at a loss," but when he asked Paul if he wanted to be tried in Jerusalem, he instead appealed to Caesar. After listening to the explanation, Agrippa said, "I would like to hear the man himself." Paul was about to have an opportunity to talk to a human king about King Jesus. Verse 23 through 27. The next day, Paul appeared before Festus, Agrippa, and Bernice. Bernice was Agrippa's sister. with whom he was rumored to be in an incestuous relationship.
What? What did he say?
Festus explained that the Jewish community wanted Paul dead, that he, Festus, had not found him guilty of anything, and that Paul had appealed to the emperor. Then Festus described his dilemma. I have nothing definite to write to my lord, Caesar, about him. That's why he wanted Agrippa to listen to Paul and to offer some advice. Festus was understandably embarrassed to send a prisoner to Caesar without indicating the charges against him. Doing so was no small matter. In essence, Festus was saying, help me out, Agrippa. Don't let me look like a fool in front of the emperor. And that is the end of chapter 25. Only 3 videos left, chapters 26, 27, and 28. So stay tuned for those. May God bless everyone, and I will see y'all next time.